And now to talk to us about the EFF, we're joined by political analyst from the University of Johannesburg, Mr. Vusi Gumbi. Mr. Gumbi, a very good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the late edition.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Of course, the EFF is celebrating its 12th anniversary this week. And from your perspective, Mr. Gumbi, what have been the party's most significant contributions or disruptions to South African politics since its founding?
I think their biggest contribution in South African landscape was to conscientize people, firstly, about the legislature. I think as I was listening to the previous input from, I think, one of their top 6 members about how they sought to be disruptive, so to speak. I think they must be given credit for how they rejuvenated interest in issues around policy making, in issues around, the National Assembly. But more importantly, I think they played a big role also in keeping the ANC on its toes, right? Because if you recall, most of the ANC's splinter groups did not have much impact, after their formations from the UDM, from COPE, but the EFF has proved to have staying power, and that's largely because of their ability to relate to a wide range of demographics in South African society. So I think that's what has been largely important. But I think the biggest one of the cuff is how the party has been able to ensure that South Africans follow, policy-making process, parliamentary processes. I think it's very important that we give them credit for shedding light on Parliament. I mean, before the EFF, I don't think most people had interest, in issues like the State of the Nation address, the debates that follow, the proposals in Parliament that are put forward by various political parties in relation to socio-economic conditions of the country. So I think they broadened people's perspectives and knowledge of Parliament as we know it.
And the EFF is known for its confrontational style and theatrical tactics in Parliament. How effective have these been in terms of influencing legislation, holding the the executive to account, or maybe even shifting national debates?
I mean, in politics what they say, right? The end justify the means. Right. So the means justify the ends.
Right.
So I think the word disruptive is very good because I think they were well aware that conventional engagement in politics was never going to yield results. So they had to use alternative ways to ensure that firstly they forced the hand of the executive. I think they played a very crucial role, during the Nkandla ad hoc committee, when obviously the ruling party at the time was hell-bent on making sure that they protect the president. And they are the ones, this phase, pay back the money became synonymous with South African politics. Yes. The issues around Nkandla and exposing the extent of the corruption at the time, as per the public protector's report, really, and credit must be given to the EFF on how they were able to galvanize, the disruptive nature. In fact, that to say, we're not going to turn the State of the Nation address into a ceremonial event, but an event to hold the executive for account, where, it was almost a given that they're going to say pay back the money. I think it was like 3 or 4 successive State of the Nation addresses where they were chucked out of Parliament. And that, to some extent, yielded results for the party because although some sections of society felt that it was disruptive, that became important in shedding light, 1, to parliamentary process, but 2, to trying to hold the executive to account, because remember, they were alive to the idea that they don't have the numbers, and politics is a numbers game. So, but politics, I think one thing the EFF has been able to do is understanding that politics is not only a numbers game, but it's also a game about optics, right? The perception, people's perceptions, the public's perceptions of what's happening in Parliament. So I think that's one thing they've been able to do quite well.
Mr. Gumbi, some may not see it the way you look at it. Some critics argue that the EFF's parliamentary disruptions undermine democratic processes, while supporters say they revitalize accountability. Where do you stand on this debate?
Two truths can coexist, right? I mean, for instance, if you look at when they stormed the podium of parliament during the president's State of the Nation address, I'm not sure whether it's last year or the year before last. I mean, someone can say that's quite unbecoming, you know, where you're going to storm into the head of state while they're delivering a State of the Nation address. But others then can say, in some instances, it has been able to yield results where people can pose questions about whether or not, if it was not for the likes of parties like the EFF pushing for accountability in parliament in cases like Nkandla, or revitalizing the questions around expropriation without compensation, or exposing general corruption in the public, whether some of these things would have been uncovered, right? So I think in this case, two truths can coexist. There are some instances, as I referred to President Ramaphosa's State of the Nation address, where they stormed into the podium, and that was unbecoming, especially of a country that is building a democracy anchored on people, on human rights and democracy, and you know. So that was, but on the other hand, it has yielded results in the past. So I think when we tackle this question, we must be alive to the notion that two truths can coexist. We don't have to choose either or.
Now, we certainly cannot talk about the EFF without talking about the recent reported defections of Floyd Shivambu and Vusi Ndlozi, you know, two high-profile founding members. And these defections have raised so many questions about unity and internal discipline within the party. So what do these defections reveal about the EFF's internal dynamics? And do you think the party's centralized leadership under Julius Malema has become both A, a strength, and B, a weakness at this stage in its life cycle?
Well, I think, one, I think with the defection of Floyd Shivambu, initially, right, it did cause a bit of, you know, uncertainty for the EFF about the future of the party as we know it. But I believe that they've redeemed themselves, or they've been vindicated, especially since, you know, the last few months and the revelations in the MK party and Floyd Shivambu leaving to go and start a consultative process. So I think Floyd Shivambu not lasting in the MK party has vindicated the EFF to say, look, we need the center to hold in the party. Perhaps Julius Malema's way of doing things is correct in order to build a relatively small political party. But on the other hand, there are people who are saying that, you know what, they should not have treated Vusi Ndlozi the way they did, right? People who believe that he's still an asset, was still needed in the political landscape of the country. So it goes back to what I said about, you know, two truths coexisting. To say with Floyd, we can easily say the EFF has been vindicated, because now the question is about Floyd's perception and his own a character and judgment of character. But on the other hand, to say, well, Vusi Ndlozi, it could have been a different case, right? So I think the departure of both Floyd and Vusi should be analyzed separately. Where with Floyd, it can be said, okay, the party is vindicated, but with Vusi, perhaps the party should have handled the matter differently to keep him in the party, because he's a relatively young leader who has done so much in parliament over the last 11 years and possibly still had so much to contribute.
Okay. Mr. Gumbi, great chatting to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, some critics may say the party's radical economic positions haven't really translated into practical policy alternatives, and in a rapidly shifting political environment, the question still remains. Does the EFF still have the potential to be a genuine kingmaker or coalition partner, or does its confrontational style limit its influence in coalition politics? Well, political analyst Vusi Gumbi joined us to reflect on the EFF's legacy as it marks 12 years of existence.